Welcome to the Wednesday Match Play, your weekly connection to the biggest and best brands in golf. On this show you will learn more about the latest golf fashion trends, hear from LPGA and PGA Tour players, get advice on planning your next golf getaway, and much more. Broadcasting live from Palm Desert, California, now on the tee, Ricky Potts.
Vice continues to roll out new releases here in 2026, and this is the latest, their new Boost Plus package set of golf clubs. Head over to letsplaythrough.com, where Gabe is taking these out on course for 6 holes with an over-under of +1. The retail price in this set is only $9.99. How will these clubs perform? Let's find out.
Experience the spirit of St. Andrews with Eden Mill. From our award-winning gins and whiskeys to our craft beers, every sip tells a story of Scotland's rich tradition and modern innovation. Handcrafted with passion and precision, Eden Mill is more than a drink. It's a celebration of heritage, flavor, and the art of distilling. Perfect for toasting life's moments, big or small. Discover Eden Mill today and raise a glass to Scotland. Eden Mill, raise a glass to Scotland. Learn more at edenmill.com.
Bourbon Lore is a luxury whiskey, lifestyle brand and community centered around rare American whiskey, especially bourbon and rye. It was founded by entrepreneur Mason Walker and whiskey historian, author Clay Risen. The company combines ultra-rare whiskey collecting, storytelling, travel experiences, exclusive bottle releases, and educational content. On this episode of the Wednesday Match Play podcast, brought to you by Eden Mill St. Andrews, Mason takes us back to where it all began, working in an antique shop, recalling his first sip of whiskey, and building what would become an impressive collection. He walks us through the journey for anyone new to the spirit and shares where to find the best bottles. We also dive into Bourbon Lore, how it started, the exclusive experiences they offer, proper glassware, and a recent feature in Forbes. This was a historic conversation and an honor to have Mason on the show. Let's tee off. Man, this is going to be an awesome conversation for, a lot of reasons and a lot of questions. So sorry in advance for that, but we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Today, we are going to be talking about something really cool that just kind of plopped on my desk. This guy has got a passion for this stuff. We've got so much to talk about. Let's just get started. But Mason, welcome to the Wednesday Match Play podcast, brought to you by Eden Mill St. Andrews.
Thank you so much, Ricky. I really appreciate it, brother. It's an honor, my friend.
Well, we got so much to talk about, but let's just start at the top. Where did the idea for Bourbon Lore come from, and how did it all get started?
Great question. I think, like many of us, there's always a backstory. And so for myself, for a little context, I definitely did not have a traditional upbringing when it came to the environment that my mom and dad were creating for us as a family. And that is, I grew up in an antique shop. So my mom and dad were proud owners of a small business called Country Emporium Antiques down in Tucson, Arizona. My dad was a cowboy / antique dealer. And so if you can imagine your bedroom window looking into your parents' antique shop, and your front, yard essentially being a dirt parking lot with stagecoaches and wagon wheels and cow skulls and baggage carts from the railroad days. There was a lot of story, a lot of history and heritage, and some amazing people that came through that place that I was able to meet in that first chapter of my journey. And often with my mom and dad bringing Misty and I along for these adventures and finding merchandise around the Southwest, Ricky, somebody would end up pouring my dad something on some ranch, and generally that something was a little corn syrup or a little bit of bourbon. So fast forward in my own adult life and building, an entrepreneurial venture, I too decided many years ago that I would start, breaking bread with those private practices, the doctors that we were working with, and pouring them a little bit of America's spirit at our home. And so over the years, that grew into many, many bottles, and I was not in the American whiskey space. I was not in the industry. We built a healthcare company, my wife and I did, as well as an amazing team that we had up in the Pacific Northwest. And as we built and grew that, across the United States, we hosted a lot of our doctors, and many of them would leave saying, "I'd love to repay the favor and send you a bottle." And so fast forward, many years later, we have, a lot of bottles and a lot of conversation, and in return, this opportunity to find a path to take some of those stories that many people shared with me about these bottles and bring them into life in a new iteration of our journey. So not sure it's not an easy answer because there's a little bit of it's a big conversation there, Ricky. Big story.
Well, it is a big story and it's a big collection, which we'll talk about here in a second. But let's go way back to that first bottle of whiskey or the first time that you tried whiskey, because I mean it's an acquired taste for some, but do you remember that first bottle and how did that influence your journey into collecting?
I had a grandpa that was an electrician, and I used to make him country pops, and that meant that I'd get a Pepsi out of his ice chest and pour a little bit out and get a handle of his Jim Beam out of his toolbox and put a little beam in there and shake it up and hand to him on the weekends. But every now and then I'd accidentally pick up on a grandpa's pops that I thought was one of mine around grading grandpa's. But that aside, the real first sip of American whiskey that I had happened when I was in high school, with my pops on a camping trip. So we used to primitive camp every summer, and Dad and I would four-wheel out in the middle of some beautiful national forest. And one night by a campfire, he asked me to get into the rig, and he said, "Hey, there's a paper bag underneath the passenger seat. Why don't you go in there and get that paper bag out? And there's something in there. Why don't you bring it over here to the fire?" And obviously, as I went over to the rig and pulled the bag out, I could tell that there was a bottle in there. And I brought over the campfire, handed it to Dad, and he pulled it out and poured me my first pour of whiskey sitting by the campfire with him. I'll never forget it. And it was probably one of the most horrific tasting experiences I ever had. But it was a bottle of Southern Comfort. And as a high school kid that had primarily, had the opportunity to sip on a little beer, sipping on some Southern Comfort for the first time by a fire was not as romantic as I thought it might have been. But that was my first sip of whiskey, bro.
Well, I tell you, that's a story that you'll probably never forget, and it's going down the road of like, I'm never going to drink Jose Cuervo again because of that one night. The stories.
Yeah. Well, really, to be frank, like I did not sip on whiskey after that, at all. I mean, it was just more of a moment that I shared with my dad, and he wanted to, I think it was more sentimental for him. It was I was getting later in my years in high school, and it's probably gonna be one of our last camping trips together. And so I think he wanted to have a little something to sip on together to kind of remember it. And a lot of what I think, to me, I love about what Bourbon Lore is doing is about those moments, right? Those memories, those shared experiences. But it wasn't until I was 21 and in college at University of Portland up in the Pacific Northwest, and I was actually trying to build my network. And I was out one evening at a pretty prominent spot that a lot of individuals in business would frequent during happy hour, and trying to meet, kind of build my connections in the greater Pacific Northwest. And I remember asking a cocktailer, what is with these kind of brown cocktail drinks that I see everybody sipping on around here? And she was the one that shared with me. She was like, "Mason, those are Manhattans." And I was like, I don't actually know what a Manhattan is. She shared with me a little bit about it, and she poured me one. And I remember I was not in love with it at first, but over the course of probably the next 6 months of going up there to meet people and to build my connections, I sipped on a few more, and eventually, like by the end of that period, in my senior year in college, it kind of became my cocktail of choice. Believe it or not, was a Manhattan at 21, 22 years of age. So it's stuck with me ever since.
So let's talk about that collection a little bit. I mean, you've got a lot of bottles in that collection now. Let's talk about where that collection started, the first couple of bottles, how many you have in your collection today, and got an idea of what the market value on that might be?
Yeah, great questions. A lot of, I think for many of us, right, our journey into some sort of category or hobby that we have an interest in, or just something that fascinates us, starts somewhere, and that somewhere isn't always at the top, right? That's it's learning from the ground floor up. And so I started really, I would say, kind of getting more into bourbon and learning more about it when my wife and I had recently gotten married, and I was president of the company that we were building, this healthcare company, and I wanted to have an opportunity to be able to connect with our doctors. And my wife and I love to garden, we love to cook, we love to host, and I shared with her, why don't we invite some of these doctors into our home and let them see us, as individuals, as husband and wife, not just as business executives in a traditional restaurant environment. And so when they were at our place, I would started kind of pouring, I'd say some of those traditional go-tos, right? Whether that as Maker's Mark, who I'm a big fan of the Samuels family, or the Wild Turkey and the Russell's family. And so I'd start pouring, and more so it was an opportunity to be able to share my love of growing up in Country Emporium and having a deep appreciation for for history, for heritage, for tradition, for folklore. And I think that allowed for me to be able to express that in our home with our doctors, pouring them a little bourbon. And over time, as you start to learn more, and people would be in our home and they'd say, Mason, my granddad or my dad or my uncle, or sometimes my aunt would always love to pour a little something here and there, and that something was this particular bottle. I would learn from them, right? And I think to myself, well, I want to try that. And sometimes those bottles weren't around anymore, and they'd say, hey, this was a beautiful beautiful evening. I can't believe you had us into our home. I'd love to repay the favor. And can I send you this bottle that I've been holding on to, that when my uncle passed away, my aunt gave it to me, and I'm never going to open it and appreciate it the way that you have shared these bottles with me here tonight in your home. Can I send it to you as a little thank you? And someday will you open that bottle and maybe tell my uncle's story? And so that, Ricky, like genuinely, like that is where it began, right? So just, me going around the Pacific Northwest, visiting a few liquor stores, 15 to 20 years ago, to learn more from some of those liquor stores, learning, from some of the bartenders, to pouring, some of those more traditional bottles in my home and sharing those with our doctors. And then over time, everyone has a little bit of a story to share, and it's creating those moments to be able to hear it. And after I'd hear some of those stories and become fascinated with learning a little bit more about a different chapter of bourbon that I wasn't aware of, or a different distillery that I wasn't familiar with, you kind of do some research or try to find some of those bottles. The next thing you know, you're down another rabbit hole learning about the 1950s, or some of the good stuff from the 1970s. So fast forward, to get back to your question of how many. It's a lot, Ricky. I'm talking like it outgrew the theater room, it outgrew the upstairs bar, it grew into my office downstairs. And over the years, my wife's like, Mason, so help me, if I find another bottle hidden in some cabinet or closet or under the kids' beds, like, enough. Like, there's too many bottles that are filling our home. And I was like, well, they're gifts, from a lot of amazing people. We can't just get rid of them. And I want to find opportunities to be able to share them and pour them. So fast forward today, never in my wildest dreams did I think we might have one of the rarest American whiskey collections in the United States. And from a value, let's just say that it quite a few years ago exceeded the value of our primary residence. And that was I'd say quite surprising to me to see how bourbon had become a level of collectability and rarity amongst some of the highest, most sought after, items across the United States as well as internationally when it comes to what collectors are into. So, yeah, brother, it's been a pretty wild last almost 20 years.
Well, that's cool. And I collect Tiger Woods memorabilia. Not as tasty on the palate maybe as a whiskey collection, but I understand the need and the passion. And if Tiger's face is on it, I want it. And I'm an active collector of that. I'm even going to nerd out and tell you that the boxes that I store the stuff in are red and black because he wears red on Sunday. So like, I'm that darn nerdy about it. But out of all of those
Well,
bottles that are in your collection, are there a couple that stand out as your personal favorites?
oh, it's like asking a dad of four which kid is my favorite. I love them all equally most days. But I would say, you know, there's definitely certain bottles that have a certain level of emotional connection, a certain level of memory. And I think that's what I love about, I think, for many of us, right? Like there's certain moments and places and people that certain things kind of bring to life and kind of bring back that memory and bring back that shared experience to where it gives that gift. So a lot of these bottles represent that to me. Like I would say, there's a bottle that's very sentimental to me or very emotional to me from a personal level of connection, and it's actually I put it in the book with Clay, and it's a bottle of Old Overholt, which is an incredible distillery that we don't have a long enough call to get into today, but a distillery that's been around since essentially the early 1800s. It's one of the oldest distilleries in the United States. Began in Pennsylvania. Phenomenal, heritage and lore, so to speak, in the world of American whiskey. But I had come across basically a bottle from 1908 of Old Overholt, which, obviously anything, from a level of collectability to think that a bottle of American whiskey could survive, over, 100 plus years, and for a variety of reasons not have, been broken or lost or destroyed, or, why wasn't that bottle opened? But there's a unique story of these Old Overholts from roughly around 1908, 1909, with a gentleman by the name of Andrew Mellon, who, if you go back to kind of the turn of the century, was very active in the world of banking and investments, and quite successful as the Mellon family goes. And he, in particular, I think at that point in time, was also the U.S. Treasury Secretary for the United States. And Prohibition comes around, and long story short, he had a small number of bottles, exclusively for him from Old Overholt, to maybe, I think, kind of take care of him through Prohibition. And some of these cases were delivered to his primary residence in Manhattan, and these cases were from 1908, 1909, and I happen to have one of those cases. And so when my best friend and my father, my dad, unfortunately got sick in 2017 and passed away, I opened up one of those bottles of 1908 Old Overholt and shared it his final celebration of life. And that's a bottle that I still cherish to this day, and do everything I can to always have one or two on hand and share it with friends and family. And every time I do, it brings back that memory of my pops and all the incredible things that we shared together along the trail, so to speak. So so that bottle, I'd say, immediately kind of pops to mind.
Well, thanks for sharing all that with us. And that was a really good segue into my next question about the bottles. Are you opening all of them to try them, or do you ever buy a bottle and just keep it in case it's worth more down the road, or do you have to try it if you buy it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like gonna be a tough thing to do. Just have a bottle sit there not
Yeah.
open, though.
Yeah, they're definitely I would say the short answer is yes. My aspiration is to be able to open these bottles and truly give that spirit its justice, and that distillery and that master distiller that worked, and being able to bring that expression to life and have it bottled, and not just to sit there and never be enjoyed or appreciated. So yes, I definitely, I think over, especially with what we're doing at Bourbon Lore, I love being able to open these bottles and share them with, new friends, old friends, family, you name it. And, I was at one of our members' homes, just a couple months ago, and we opened up a bottle from Prohibition together from 1923 of Paul Jones whiskey. And, he's like, "You can't open this." I'm like, "No, it's a gift. I want to open it. This is what these bottles are about." And, there was roughly probably 15, maybe 17 of us over there at his place for a dinner. And Ricky, like, opening that bottle kind of changed the entire, energy in that room, and at that dinner, and in a really powerful way, to where, everybody slowed down just a little bit. And when that bottle was cracked, and this idea that for, again, for over 100 years, for a century, where did this bottle travel to? What hands did it go through? What places did it see? And now it's found its way here to this home with us tonight. And so, we opened that, and a lot of the guests there, started kind of diving into conversations and stories and memories. And it was just, we all probably stood there for probably a good 45, 50 minutes, just cherishing this moment together. And a lot of these folks were not necessarily whiskey people or collectors by any means, but fans of life, right? And so, I would love to see many of these bottles get shared, in my lifetime. Some of them, there's a level of rarity or scarcity where, like there's a bottle in the book from the collection that, was barreled, roughly around 1864 in Kentucky. And, it's the only one known to exist, and of a high age statement, 25-year plus rye, that officially was bottled sometime in the 1890s. And it's like, that's a piece where I feel like No, it probably shouldn't be open. It needs to be preserved for historical reference. But a lot of them were opening, and I enjoy it thoroughly.
Well, for somebody that is new to whiskey and they say, "Hey, I'm interested in learning more," where do they start? I mean, do they grab a bottle of Jack Daniels and just see what it tastes like, or what's the journey look like for somebody that's a beginner?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think for myself, a lot of what I learned. I mean, first there was just this knowledge basis that I didn't have when it came to, what is bourbon as a spirit? How is it different than other spirits that are out there? Why is it unique, right? And you'll be amazed. A lot of that can be, answered and shared from, local, bars and restaurants that always have a cocktail or mixologist that's, fascinated and interested in their craft. And so I learned a lot sincerely from just the men and women at these restaurants and bars, making these incredible mixed cocktails, to making friends with some of the local liquor stores, right? And the guys and gals running those places that have a real passion for some of the bottles that are on the shelf. Today, the world of information that is available to you from a social perspective, from a YouTube perspective, you'll see there's some incredible channels that are out there providing educational content, feedback. There's some great books. So I'd say really the simplest form is every time I'm at a restaurant or every time I'm out at a particular establishment with some friends, I'll ask questions to the cocktailer, and the same with my local liquor store. But you have people like Sarah with like Whiskey Nomad on Instagram, who does an incredible job of just educating you on what is whiskey, both internationally and domestically here in the U.S. And then bottle wise, everybody always kind of asks like, what are some bottles, Mason, that are within reason that I can get my hands on, but really are something pretty extraordinary. And I'm always encouraging people, like, there's some flagship brands and distillers that have worked on their recipes, they've worked on their mash bills for generations, and truly have a level of brand recognition that is well warranted. And those are brands like for many of us, Maker's Mark and that weeded recipe they have. And still to this day, my wife loves sipping on Maker's 46, this French oak one that they have that she absolutely loves. I think Wild Turkey does an incredible job. And the Russell's family's the oldest continuously operating family in the aspect of a master distiller and blender capacity, with the oldest family member, Jimmy Russell, breaking 70 years of continuous employment at Wild Turkey as the master distiller, and an incredible individual. And his son Eddie, carried that forward, and now a good friend of ours and a member of our Bourbon Lore board, Bruce Russell, he's carrying that forward. And so that Wild Turkey rare breed, I don't know if you've ever seen that at the liquor store. I mean, it's probably only depending on where you're at in the U.S., $45 to $60, and it's an amazing pour. So yeah, Michter's has a rye that I really love that is pretty accessible around the U.S. as well. And Heaven Hill with like Elijah Craig. So yeah, there's a few goodies out there.
You're gonna have me going to the liquor store here when we're done recording. And obviously I could go to a Total Wine or a Bevmo, but where are you shopping? Like, do you have a local liquor store that you recommend? Do you buy online? If I'm looking to get a bottle, like, where should I go?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, obviously, when I started out, 15 plus years ago, it was all local liquor stores, right? And making friends, and still to this day, I mean, I've got a few local liquor stores that I really, cherish and appreciate. Here, the Phoenix Greater Metro, Trevor's has done an incredible job. You can also get some great pours there. But I think your local liquor store is a great bet. It's especially for any of those stores that have been around for a while, they might be able to get access to, some level of what they call these LEs or limited editions that come out, on an annual basis, certain times of the year. Online, though, has become much larger, right? So, you have groups like Bourbon Outfitters, which you can go to bourbonoutfitters.com. Sealbox, these guys are based out of DC. they do a really good job of working with a lot of the craft distillers that are out there. So Ricky, when you think about kind of like the industry, you have some of the really kind of, long-standing flagship brands like we were referencing with like Wild Turkey or, Heaven Hill and Elijah Craig or Maker's Mark. But over the years, there's been a real emergence of craft in the American whiskey space. And, today we're approaching almost 3,000 unique whiskey brands in the US. And Sealbox and Bourbon Outfitters does a good job of really representing from an online standpoint, you and I getting access to some of those craft brands that may not be made available in, traditional distribution at, an Albertsons or a Fry's or a Total Wine. So I definitely check out some of the online players in addition to your local spots.
So let's say I want to start my collection today. I mean, does it start with a bottle of Jack Daniels? Like, was the collection like I keep going to Jack because everybody knows it, but an iconic brand. But like,
You're
what
right.
what makes it a collection?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great, so for me, I think that word collection is an interesting one, right? And so I think just like probably for you with Tiger, right? Like there's a personal level of, joy and fulfillment and, I'd say like this level of emotional connection to the brand that goes beyond like the product itself, right? So for a lot of what American whiskey represents to me, I'm fascinated the more I learn about the history of the United States and the history associated with American whiskey and spirits and the role it's played from, the whiskey rebellion of the 1700s to, George Washington and feeding his militia, Michter's, to, the Bottled in Bond Act of 1897 for this level of consumer legislation to like the history of prohibition. Like it's just fascinating, or how many wars we funded in the United States that we battled domestically that came from spirits tax to, one point up, right before prohibition. I mean, you had Ricky somewhere in the neighborhood of, they said, estimated 40 to as much as 70% of the federal budget was being funded annually through spirit sales and taxation in the United States. So it's like, wow, right? To think that we would have a chapter in our history with, essentially having prohibition be able to come to life and what that meant, for the United States. So when I say collection, there's a real passion, I think, that is there for the history, the heritage, the legacy, the tradition associated with the spirit. So, for myself, I think the more you learn and have the opportunity to kind of educate yourself about the industry, the different chapters, that it's gone through, then the more you become fascinated with the distillers that are here today, right? And mash bills that, they've been perfecting for decades or some for, over a century. But I think it really comes down to also just trying things, right? So to part of your question, like I sipped on Jack for a long time and still do to this day. And shout out to Chris Fletcher, who's their master distiller. The Jack Daniels that Chris's eighth generation as well, in that whole kind of Jack Daniels Fletcher family legacy, to see what he has been able to evolve, a flagship distiller like Jack Daniels to today with, getting even more complex with some of the, the recipes and some of the distillation strategy that they have. If you sipped on a Jack Daniels from some of their private single barrel selections to their rye, Ricky, your mind would be blown that this isn't just your granddad's old number 7. This is a whole new iteration of what premium American whiskey can taste like. So I think a lot of it is just trying some of the flagships and then starting to figure out what speaks to you, right? Because there is a lot to be said when it comes to those mash bills and the difference between those mash bills, the difference between bourbon, the difference between rye. There's a lot that's also occurred when it comes to finishes, as well as obviously the different type of aging and, there's a level of like what they, when you start kind of getting these age statements, what a higher age statement bourbon tastes like versus a younger bourbon, right? So the whole class, you and I might have to do a working session on that together next time I'm out there in Palm Desert at your place.
Yeah, I'll twist my arm. That sounds like a good way to spend an afternoon or an evening by the fire pit.
Oh,
Granted, it's going to be about 115 degrees this weekend, so the
yeah.
temperatures are on
It'll
the
win.
rise.
Well, I'll see you a little bit later this year then.
You
Um,
describe Bourbon Lore as the world's first luxury whiskey experience. Let's tackle that. What is Bourbon Lore all about? Where did it come from? What was your vision? What does luxury mean to you in this context?
yeah, so I appreciate the question and the aspect of it is different. Bourbon Lore is not a distiller, right? We are not out there distilling our own whiskey. We are very much about the experiential side of what we're building and then collaborating with some of the most prominent distilleries to release some really incredible limited edition bottles with them, exclusively for our membership in many cases. But um, to back up for a second, we were in healthcare for almost 20 years, and we ended up having a public company acquire our entity. And in 2021, that earnout ended with the public company that acquired us. And so I shared with my wife that, I was turning 40 that year, and I said, I want to have an adventure. We have been pushing the envelope to, build this healthcare company. It's been incredible, an amazing journey. We've met so many, extraordinary people, and but let's take a moment and hit reset as a family. And so we ended up basically selling and getting rid of every material possession that we owned or had, including our home. And we spent almost a year and a half homeschooling our kids from the great outdoors and living in and out of roughly about 23 different national parks, all up and down the West Coast. And it was a wild, incredible chapter for us as a family, and one that I'll always cherish. And as we came off the road in 2022 and settled basically back here in Arizona in Scottsdale, I had a friend reach out to me sharing that somebody from the New York Times was doing a piece around the state of American whiskey becoming this, really kind of the second most valuable spirit in the world. And that this individual wanted to speak to somebody that had owned and does own many of these extraordinary, American whiskey bottles. And I've opened up a lot of mine, right? So this gentleman calls me from the New York Times and ends up putting some of my information in this piece that he did. And that piece came out in December of 22. And so you can imagine, if you're in a New York Times article as an enthusiast in a particular category, people are reaching out. Who are you? What's your story? How many bottles do you have? And one thing led to another. And Clay Risen, who was the author of that piece, he flew out, and he and I spent some time together here in Scottsdale. And I shared with Clay, at this stage of my journey, at this stage of my life, what is it that we are really seeking? And for myself, it is experiential. It is these opportunities to have these adventures, to share in these extraordinary moments, with Ashley, my wife, with close friends, but also meeting new friends, right? And I think that's a lot of the world of golf that I'm starting to really kind of better understand is also about, right? It's what happens there on the on the green, hopefully it carries forward, right? And those relationships that you create on the course that day, the stories, the memories, the moments, they live on after that day. And hopefully those are new core memories that bring you joy and bring you, a level of friendship with the people that you shared it with. And so what I shared with Clay is a lot of what I would love to see potentially in, creating something that really doesn't exist is today in the world of American whiskey, you have this incredible Kentucky tourism board. They do an amazing job with the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky and all the distilleries. But outside of Kentucky, what is there really to be able to have in experiencing, what the core aspect of America's spirit is all about? And to me, it is about heritage. It's about tradition. It is big. It's bold. It's about adventure. And so could we find a way to curate these, one of one really special experiences in key destinations around the US, and have bourbon be a core element of what brings this experience together, but allows for these bottles to be open and shared in these amazing destinations through, our licensed partners and, caterers and, distilleries in a way that to me gives me something deeper and richer than what would traditionally be maybe available at a a distillery tour or sample tasting in the distillery visitor center. And so, Ricky, we kicked off Bourbon Lore is really doing destination experiences where American whiskey, its story, its history was really tied to these experiences. And we launched those in Arizona, Jackson Hole, and in Kentucky with one of our distillery partners. And they're generally designed for 12 to 15 attendees, ranging in price point from 5,000 to 20,000 a person. These all inclusive, completely one of one experiences that when I say luxury, luxury not in the aspect of, we're sitting at the Four Seasons or at the St. Regis, but luxury in the way of it's a curated, high touch, high value, white glove adventure that many of our guests never even knew they were missing or didn't even know that this was possible until they met Bourbon Lore. And so that was kind of the core foundation. And I say brand ethos was how can we create these extraordinary one-of-one experiences and have bourbon be a central key component, but a layer in that. And then that evolved into a lot of corporate and private clients asking to basically bring Bourbon Lore on site. And much of what you and I kind of talked about with the private, kind of golf club environment is how can we bring something unique and extraordinary and truly, legendary to our members, to our guests at a particular private club or at a particular corporate retreat. And so we launched those last year with much fanfare. And then officially this year in January, we launched the world's first private membership model tied to essentially some of the core fundamentals of the experiences, but really curated now private, truly rare one-of-one barrels for our members to extremely limited one-of-one releases exclusively for our membership through our distillery partners, where Bourbon Lore is creating an opportunity for our members to have access to those, those specialty pieces directly through our distillery partners.
Yeah, that is just awesome. Like, what a unique thing you've created here. And, you could look at it, you could look at the website, you could look at the logo, you could look at the vibe that you're creating and immediately just think, oh yeah, they make whiskey. No, you don't make whiskey. You are sharing whiskey. You are sharing experiences. And I'm glad that you've used that word experience more than once because in the private club world, yeah, our members join the club. Yeah, they pay an initiation fee. They pay dues. All they care about is the experience. And I love
Yes.
giving a better experience today than we did yesterday because the members are paying for that and expect that. So that's awesome that you're doing that
Yes.
within this world of delicious liquids.
Yeah, thank you, brother. People are like, so how many bottles can I buy from you or this or that? I'm like, we actually do not sell alcohol. We are not licensed to sell alcohol. We are an experience company. We are creating access for you through licensed retail partners as well as through, our distillery partners. And I think that's the beauty for me of, what we're building. And that is this community has never existed before until Bourbon Lore. And when you look at the board that now is helping guide, develop, and grow Bourbon Lore, it's some of the most prominent bourbon families that are in the United States with their master distillers. And like we have a collaboration with Diageo and a distillery that they have called Stitzel Weller. And the release that we have coming up with them in August for the membership is one of only 17 bottles. 17, Ricky. That's it. And, so special, so significant that Diageo's, keeping two of those 17, in a vault. And, these are the only 15 that will ever be released to a private client. And our members are going to get that opportunity to experience not only getting access to that bottle, but tasting it for the first time in Old Man Pappy's office, from Stitzel Weller, with the master distiller herself of the distillery, right? It's like that's a memory that I'll never forget and how that bottle was opened, cherished, and shared, right? So
Well, you just said a word there that hits close to the heart with Pappy, and I don't know if we'll have time to talk about it today, but I've got a story about my good friend Roger Kincaid and drinking a glass of Pappy, and yeah, man, that was a special experience.
Amen. I love it. I love it.
Well, some say neat, others prefer ice. I usually start neat and will add a little water, more so with like Scotch whiskeys. But what do you recommend, and how do you personally enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a beauty in when you start to better understand the world of whiskey. There's a lot that can and should be expressed through the bottle itself, from the label to the transparency. So the label, the bottle, I find fascinating, but when you actually start to pour that bottle, I think we can't lose sight of the glassware that you use as well, right? Just like in wine, which many of our members are wine enthusiasts, the glassware can really transform, how that basically, varietal comes to life from an aroma to a palate experience. So I'd say number one, always look at that bottle, look for the transparency in that label. But number two, think about the glassware in which you're using. And those blends do make a difference, right? And so the reason why I bring that up is because I generally will always encourage somebody to have a good glass, Glencairn. There's obviously different styles that you can select from, but that glass then allows for you to really be able to experience the aroma and that nose of that spirit, which today is these distillers, Ricky, have worked you know diligently for a lot of years to get to a place to where this spirit called bourbon is absolutely freaking remarkable. And there's a reason why it's become the second most valuable spirit in the world. Because if there is truly a thing called premium whiskey, it is now today alive and well in the United States with what we're doing with our bourbons and our ryes. So I always say start neat, go with that good glass, go with that Glencairn, allow for yourself to experience it. Ricky, the other thing I always share with people is don't forget your 3 sip rule. That first sip is always going to be a little bit of a palate kind of wake up call, right? It's not like you're sipping on bourbon, all day long, or at least some of us aren't, but for the most part, when you get that first palate taste, that's that kind of like, you'll see a lot of people go, oh, wow, oh, I don't know if I enjoy that. Well, it's just like biting into a lemon in my mind, right? I'm not sipping on lemons all day. I'm not biting into lemons all day. So that first kind of palate experience, you got to kind of think about that 3 sip rules. You're not really able to truly appreciate that sip and that first sip. That second sip, I always encourage, our private members to move that sip around, right? Like let that second sip, start to kind of coat that palate. There's somebody, that told me one time they called that, when I was out in Kentucky, they're like, well, I call that the Kentucky chew, and, I heard that, the nose, as far as Fred No or the Jim Beam family, they call that the Kentucky chew. But I think there's something to be said with swishing that second sip around and letting it kind of coat your palate. And you'll be amazed then when you go in for that third sip, that's the first actual moment where you truly get to taste that whiskey from a front palate, mid palate, and finish. So give yourself 3 sips, neat. And then at that point, I'm a big fan of, you can always add a little water, right? Get that whiskey to where it absolutely hits the right level of balance for your palate to where you feel like you could truly enjoy that expression and get, the level of, taste and beauty out of the glass and out of the spirit. But clearly, I'm not putting some of my more premium bourbons on rocks, but if you're with me here at home in the summer, are you going to see me sipping on something poolside on some rocks and more of a different type of glass? Yeah, you will. So I don't discriminate. Let's put it that way.
Well, there has been a trend among younger adults moving away from alcohol and moving more towards either not drinking at all or mocktails when they go out. And you're seeing that even in my wife and I are huge craft beer people, and you're seeing brewing companies closing all over the world. How do you view that shift and its impact on whiskey?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, this is not something that's new to the world of whiskey, right? We've had, there's 200 years of history where you've had, different iterations and, kind of cultural movements when it comes to the space. And we even saw that, and basically this era called like the whiskey glut, which really started to take shape, right around the Vietnam War, and a lot of clear spirits took the charge of brown spirits, and for almost 3 decades, you basically saw bourbon consumption drop completely in the United States. And then we had this kind of whiskey golden era that we've been in for the last, I'd say 20 plus years. So I would say just like any industry, just like any vertical, you have a level of, fluctuation associated with that category over a period of time. So I don't think this is, something that to me is like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? This is something that we've never seen before. I think if you go back and look at history, there's a lot to be learned from the history of spirits in the U.S. With what we're experiencing, with some of the downward trends, especially with that younger generation. But I also would say like there's a level of, some of the individuals, that I, meet at different events where it really is quality over quantity, right? Like it's not this big, I'm, looking for larger consumption. Some of these people I'm, running into or, meeting, they're sharing that, I'm only sipping on more celebratory occasions, right? I'm sipping on more, for when I just go out with my significant other. I'm not casually sipping, at home anymore. And so I think there's this kind of piece of this quality over quantity that I continue to kind of hear as well. But I think, like for a lot of us, like within my, I don't know, group of friends, like there's a level of they're interested in the spirit based around not necessarily always just general consumption, but being able to have access to the premium releases. And so they're waiting, right? Like they're not just buying, 3 or 4 random bottles a week or a month. They're waiting to find that one special bottle. So is there a downward trend in the younger generation? Absolutely, right? But I think you can see it, like you said, across a variety of categories. But I think it's just, it's another chapter that we're going through. And
Any advice for someone that's looking to pair a cigar with a good glass of whiskey? I mean, is that something that you're doing? Do you have relationships,
yeah,
partnerships? It just seems like the right
yeah.
ideal pairing.
Yeah, no, I used to enjoy quite a few cigars before marriage. Ash is not as big of a fan of cigars as I was, so I still like today now. Like I still smoke cigars, but it's not a regular occurrence at home. It's always more around somebody's, we're celebrating something with friends or with a buddy. But I think pairing a cigar with a phenomenal pour is probably one of the most enjoyable ways to be able to sip on America's spirit in many ways. So I mean, I think like we have an amazing family that I'm incredibly proud of here in the U.S. that built an extraordinary cigar portfolio called Alec Bradley cigars. And so we do a lot with Alec Bradley and some of their limited pieces. And obviously, depending upon the pour, and what type of cigar, if I'm sipping on something a little sweeter, from a bourbon standpoint, and not as high proof, then yeah, I'll probably be smoking something a little lighter, right? Versus if I'm getting into some of my higher proof bourbons and some of my darker cigars. But Alec Bradley, I think, does a phenomenal job, and if you probably check out their Instagram, you'll see that they've done some collabs with some of the distilleries, and actually pairing certain bourbons specifically to a limited release cigar that they launched. So check them out for sure.
Well, I want to check out these experiences again. So you talked a little bit about those, but I mean they're obviously bespoke and very customized and very intentional. What's the next one coming up? How many people are going? Do you have to be a member? Like for somebody that's listening at home that wants to go, where do they start?
Yeah, so I'd say go to bourbonlore.com. If you want to, be a part of our Bourbon Lore community, if you want to be able to be a part of the, unique updates that we share to our community via our newsletter, go to bourbonlore.com. You can register your information there, and you'll get basically the latest updates from everything that we have happening in the world of Bourbon Lore. I would also say follow us along on Instagram, again at Bourbon Lore. You'll see that we'll have a lot of updates with different destinations, cities that we're going to be in. And then lastly, our YouTube. We try to really do our part to share some incredible video content. It's like, how do you capture these incredible experiences, Ricky, in a photo, in an email? And it's impossible. But our videographers do their best to try to ensure that they can capture us living the lore of Bourbon Lore in these incredible events and experiences that we're hosting. So definitely go to bourbonlore.com. If you're on Instagram, I'd absolutely, appreciate, you following along as we share our journey. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel on YouTube, please do so. Otherwise, the experiences, we really are now leaning into this kind of world of what does a lore destination experience in the United States represent, and how can we start creating these flagship, one-of-one, bespoke offerings and key destinations in the U.S. as Bourbon Lore. And so today, you'll see that we have a full-time program in Jackson Hole. Have you spent any time out there, Ricky, in Jackson Hole, Teton Valley?
No, I haven't, but I
Oh,
twist my arm.
let's
I'll
get
come join you.
yeah, I'll talk to Bobby. We'll get you on the list. But Jackson Hole, we lived in the national parks. Like, there's something truly remarkable about the town of Jackson, the Grand Tetons and the Teton Valley, and the whole lower Yellowstone that is just life changing. So Bourbon Lore has worked diligently over the last couple of years with some of the ranches that are in the Teton Valley, some of the incredible wranglers that are out there, some of the families in Jackson Hole that have been there for generations. And we now have two incredible bespoke offerings that we offer full time during the summer. And there's elements of, we try to reimagine what is the world of, a horseback experience, it elevated at the highest level possible and brought into the Teton Valley, one of the most, gorgeous destinations in the lower 48. What would that look like? And can we create that with the right teammates and partners in Jackson? And so, that program is exceptional. It's one of my favorites. We have an incredible partnership with the Snake River Ranch family for a float trip that goes from the north end of the ranch on the Snake down to the south end, and with some anglers and some fly fishing lessons to curated dinners on top of these mountain ridge lines in the Teton Valley, and 7-course Argentina tapas inspired dinner experiences paired with rare Malbecs, and partnering with the Wyoming whiskey family for limited edition releases that they bring out and share with our guests. So lots of great stuff in Jackson Hole. Absolutely check it out. We've also put together an incredible lore package. And so the Jackson Hole one really, Ricky's around, I'd say, 6 to 12 guests, right? And it's a package that you can book. And then the Kentucky program is very similar, right? So it's a specialty package where it's limited in numbers, but I'd say around 4 to 6 attendees, generally for the Kentucky lore package. But like, you're staying at one of the oldest remaining historic homes in Kentucky, built in 1820, owned by one distilling family since the day it was built. The home is now filled with all the family's heritage and history, and photographs of them growing up with the Beams and the Pappy Van Winkle family. And our guests get to stay there and experience the behind the scenes access to Kentucky that they could only ever dream of. And it's not necessarily something that's readily available to the mainstream audience that we curate for them. At every experience, Ricky, we also send a Bourbon Lore legend storyteller that acts as your co-host, help facilitate all the different layers and pieces, and the destinations and the places and the people and the private chefs. So you actually have a dedicated host that as a legend storyteller that joins these. So Jackson Hole and Kentucky are up and alive today. I'll give you a little sneak peek. We are getting ready to launch a Park City Bourbon Lore destination program in partnership with an incredible property on a 4,000 acre, working cattle ranch out there that's just freaking incredible and stunning. And then we're also getting ready to launch our Arizona Cowboy Lore experience next month. That'll essentially be a 4-night, 5-day experience in southern Arizona on an 1860s dude ranch. Some of the favorite elements of, to me, the ghost towns of the American kind of Arizona Southwest, Bisbee, Tombstone, Native American sites and elements incorporated into it. So yeah, so those are the two that are coming to follow up on the Jackson Hole and the Kentucky.
Tell me more about the shop and what kind of products you got offering in there. And the logo is just awesome. Like it fits this brand so perfectly.
Oh, thank you, brother. Yeah, I appreciate it. Shout out to our brand design agency, Lincoln Design. Lincoln Design is phenomenal. They're one of the top brand design agencies in the U.S., and they do some incredible work for some pretty big brands like, WWE and Monster and Liquid Death and Hasbro, Mattel. So we knew we wanted to have one of the top design agencies in the U.S. to help bring the spirit of Bourbon Lore to life. So I appreciate you sharing that, man, because there's a lot of love that's been put into that brand. Everything you see, Lincoln, and we have worked hard on from a brand equity play. So the shop, gives you the ability. So if you go to bourbonlore.com, Ricky's referencing have our merchandise shop page. You'll see that we have worked with Lincoln, and they have an illustrator who's phenomenal, on the top in the country. And so you'll see those distillery illustrations. I don't know if you saw those on there, but they're one-of-one pieces that we're really proud of. Extraordinary. They were done by hand by this illustrator. And kind of allows for us to be able to have some. If you think about like what type of gift do you want to provide someone for, their theater room, for their home bar, for their man cave, for their office. Well, now there's these incredible, Bourbon Lore custom illustrations with our distillery partners that are just stunning that you'll see there in the shop. They're also printed on canvas, perfect for framing. We wanted them to really be kind of like these level of collectability kind of art pieces. You'll also see the Bourbon Lore Legends book on there, so you can get the book directly through bourbonlore.com. You can also get the book. I mean, obviously it's on Amazon. Barnes and Nobles carries it, Target carries it. But if you get it through our site, one of the things that we like to do for anybody buying it through our site is I'll personally sign one for them. You just kind of shoot us a note after you purchase it and let us know, and I'll sign. I'll gladly sign one of these beautiful books for you. So, and then you'll see that. Do you see those bottle kind of collections that were on there, Ricky, that were on the shop side?
Yeah, sure did. That was one of my questions too. That Bourbon Lore Champion set looks great.
Yeah. It was one of my favorite. We did a limited edition set of 50 each, and through one of our licensed liquor retailers through Washington, D.C., our private guests that attended the events, because to your original question, can only members attend the events? And the answer is no. The events are open to anyone and everyone, right? The membership has its own experiences outside of those events that I shared with you. But for any of our guests that attend the events, they get access to some of our kind of like custom pieces that we put together with some of our distillery partners. And so those sets that you see on there, those were made available through our licensed retail relationships in DC to those that attended our experiences last year. So they're no longer available now, but we kept them up because they're just some beautiful pieces. But I might find a bottle or two here in my home office, Ricky, that we could sip on when I come out and see you next from one of the sets.
Well, I tell you, I might keep this bottle that's sitting right here on my desk. So I got my hands on a bottle of this Bardstown bourbon. It's the series. I mean, I looked at the side of it and I was like, wait a minute, number 1710. That's not very many. I mean, tell me more about this bottle. What's that juice like inside? How many bottles are there? Like, I'm just so impressed by this, man.
Oh, good. I'm glad Bobby brought it out to you. We've only, done two basically limited edition distillery collaborations for the public. One was with Ben Holiday, and that one we had almost 49,000 people attempt to purchase that bottle, and that bottle was supposed to take roughly about 3 months to sell through our online distributor, and it's sold out, Ricky, in 46 seconds. And then the second bottle that we did was with Bardstown Bourbon Company. So that's the one that you have. We flew out there. So when we do a collaboration, Ricky, we'll go out there with we go out with a full team. We'll take a few of our private members, and it's generally a 2-day on-site with the distillery, working with their master distiller, working with their master blender, going through their rick houses, selecting certain barrels, and thinking about what is it that we're wanting to put together that is a true one of one that they've never done yet, to kind of have something that is unique to this moment with Bourbon Lore. So that Bardstown bottle you have, that we did that collaboration with the launch of our book, right? So that Bourbon Lore Legends of American Whiskey book, it's the first time a privately held American whiskey collection has ever been published in the United States or internationally. And we could talk about that here as well in a little bit. But Bardstown's phenomenal. They have some incredible product out there in Kentucky. Obviously, the distillery, just like its name, is in Bardstown, Kentucky. But we spent a couple days with their master distiller, as well as with their master blender, really Dan Calloway. And we ended up landing on these like 4 barrels that really just were phenomenal in their own right. But when they came together, there was this like magic moment where it was like, unfreaking believable. This is extraordinary. And so it's like a 10-year Kentucky bourbon in there. That's probably half of that blend. And then there's another distillery by the name of Green River. And so there's a little bit of a younger bourbon that's in there. That's, I think, a 7-year. And then we did actually a Bardstown bourbon barrel that was also a 7-year. And then there was another Kentucky 12-year in there. But there was a little bit of you'll notice in the mash bill, I don't have it in front of me right now, but there's basically a blend of both bourbon and rye in that bottle. And so one of the things that I fell in love with probably around 2011, 2012, there was this distillery called High West out of Park City. And they started doing this like kind of like this boo rye, right? And it was this like blend of bourbon and rye. And Ricky was so freaking good. And so I wanted to kind of do a little bit of that in this. And I think, our team nailed it. So I hope you enjoy it. Each one of our bottles is numbered, so you know exactly how many, are out there. That one that you have, I think we came in at like 100, and I think the final blend was like 112 as far as proof. So a little high, but not too high, but I think a really nice, balance of being able to sip on that neat, or if you want to add a little water or cube, you could do that as well.
Well, you talk about the blend, and I'm looking at there's about 47 different things going on here. 54% of this, and 13% of that, and 12% of this, and 9% of that. How in the world do you even begin to know what to do? Is it just experimentation?
Yeah. I am by no means a trained professional like our board is and our distillery partners in Kentucky. I'm just, at the end of the day, brother, I'm a fan, man. I'm a big fan of America's spirit. And so I think a lot of our members, are the same way. But basically, when you go out and you do these blends, like there's one thing, where when you're like selecting a single barrel, which, obviously, there's the opportunities to do that. But I think putting together a blend, like it's pretty fascinating. I mean, you're definitely playing around with, which barrels you think have, this kind of unique and really extraordinary aroma that speaks to which barrels have this really amazing front that, kind of experience, but on the palate, but maybe for whatever reason don't have the length, right? And then you're trying to kind of figure out, once you kind of, bring those barrels together. And again, I'm not the pro. Thank God we have some amazing people on our leadership team at Bourbon Lore. But a lot of the members and I, the private members and myself, we're having fun with kind of figuring out what really speaks to our nose, to our front palate, to our mid, to our finish. And then our team with these master blenders are then figuring out, with these like almost like it looks like a science lab from like high school, right? You got these, these, I think called beakers, maybe I think is what they call them. These like little glass, kind of, beaker files or whatever, where you like pour some of the whiskey in there, and they're trying to figure out what parts should be more for the finish versus the mid versus the front versus the nose. And a lot of trial and error, and you gotta be careful. You gotta sip on it wisely, Ricky. I made the mistake a couple times of thinking, I really need to really enjoy every sip, and I didn't make it through the first day that well. So Yeah, you don't exactly, you're not swallowing all this, right? So a lot of spitting, but a lot of feeling the palate experience out, and then within reason, after a day or two, sometimes you hit a home run, and that one that you have, that Bardstown Bourbon Company blend with us, I think is one for the record book. So you'll enjoy it.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I'm excited to open that, and I don't know who I'm going to be with, but I'm not going to drink it alone. I can promise you that. And when you talk about the ABV, I mean, this is a big boy here. It's 112.5 proof. Like, is that by
112,
design,
please.
or does
Yeah.
it just happen? Like, I mean, how high can you go, and how high have you tried? Like, that's got. I mean, it's going to have an experience on my palate. I can tell you that.
No, I mean that's the fascinating thing, to me about American whiskey and bourbon and these rick houses. It's like not one barrel, Ricky, is the same. It's crazy. As somebody who's been in healthcare for 20 years, like, you're so focused on consistency and predictability and, obviously metrics associated with the consumer and patient. In this world of American whiskey, it really is, a lot of art and a lot of science. And that's where like some of these individuals are truly, talented, extraordinary people that are these masters of maturation, right? These master, blenders to the master distillers. And so when you get into kind of like that higher proof, you would not think that some of these bottles could get up there. But I mean, we've got there's bottles out there that, depending upon where they sat in these rick houses, and how they aged and how long they aged, and how many times they were moved and what times a year they were moved, completely changes the complexity of the barrel. Just like that 24 year, right? That 24 year that we selected, when we were sloshing around the barrel, I thought there was going to be a good 40 plus bottles in there, and the Angels, after 20 plus years, took pretty much 75, probably to 85% of that barrel, and evaporated it. Like, who would have thought that 85% of a barrel would be gone, just evaporated, and we were left with 17 bottles, 17 extraordinary bottles, but that's it. And so those higher proofs sometimes are a bit of a shock to me, that you can have something that they call them hazmat. So I think it's technically anything past like 140 is almost like hazardous material, and you can't even fly with it. But you have bourbons that are out there that are pushing that. I would say most of what I probably sip on and enjoy is in that kind of 115, 120 spread. There's some that get up there in the 130s, 140s that I'm really impressed with. There's others that are even lower than that are in the low hundreds that, for whatever reason, struck a balance in that particular, bottle, where it's like that was the perfect fit. They do. Have you seen that bottled and bond?
Man, I
It's,
tell you,
it's
yeah, absolutely. It's wild.
Yeah, so you'll see that bottled and bond at the 100 proof, which is federally what they are allowed to proof it at and bottle it at. It's delicious and smooth. Like Heaven Hill does a 7-year bottled and bond that, if you haven't tried it yet, I think is a great pour, and it's a smooth, very comfortable pour on the palate that's not too high proof, kind of throwing you for a bit of a loop. Uh,
Well, you have been featured in some pretty big publications. I mean, we're talking Forbes and Bourbon Culture and Sotheby's. Are you actually out there seeking that exposure, or is it just coming to you because of what you're doing?
it has been a real blessing and a real gift. I mean, obviously, we're honored, to even be recognized in some of these, national media and press. But it's come to us, and I think I feel fortunate that we are doing what we can to live true to who we are, right? And I think, sometimes in business, just like in life, you try to be too many things to too many people, and unfortunately become, essentially no one to, to a very small audience, right? So I think for us, we've been very thoughtful. We're not trying to be everything to everyone. We know we're not the right fit for everyone. So how can we be very specific and being true to who we are for the groups that we serve, for the guests that we serve? And as a result, I think our product is is in the experiences, and in return, this kind of experiential lifestyle that Bourbon Lore is creating, not just in our limited releases. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm really proud of our limited releases. I'm really proud of the incredible distillery collaborations that our private members get access to. But I think the community and the experiences associated with that community is what people are going away with going, wow, like this, I will never forget this weekend. I'm so glad I shared this with my wife. I know this will be one of the best trips that we've ever taken together. So yeah, so we've been fortunate to have Forbes write about us. Whiskey Advocate featured us, which is one of the top whiskey publications in the world, and featured me as one of the top collectors in the United States. Sotheby's, who I think the world of, their head of American whiskeys, have somebody that I've been learning a lot from. They actually did our book launch in New York City at their gallery there. They featured us in a piece recently, and and Garden Gun and a lot of others. So I think they're seeing that this is something different. And Ricky does a lot of the traditional, and I would say a lot of the expected or ordinary when it comes to some of these places that you go to, right? Some of these cities, some of these clubs. And for the ones that push the envelope and just go 20% more, that's where that kind of land of the unknown kind of comes to life. That magic, just pushing a little bit further, is where I think we're catching the attention of some of the national press going, wait, we thought we knew what Jackson Hole was like, or we thought we understood what the Bourbon world represented when it came to experiences. But we had no idea after we saw this Bourbon Lore event that this is what was possible. We really only knew what was realistic, and that's what's getting the attention. So
You mentioned a lot of names, but I'm going to talk about Jeff for a second. Jeff Hotmeyer is described. I mean, he's a visionary. I mean, he's got a legacy like forever. What does his involvement do for you, and how does that unlock Bourbon Lore? And just kind of talk to me about him, how you met him, and what people like that are doing to help support you in this mission.
You want the off the record?
I don't know. He's gonna listen to it because I ain't gonna edit this, baby. This is going in.
Being completely transparent and upfront, which I always try to be in every situation. My co-founder, business partner, Clay Risen, who's long time authority in the world of whiskey, historian, very well accomplished author, has written many, many, many books. Clay, when we first kicked off Bourbon Lore in January of 24, said, we were talking throughout the year, and Bourbon Lore was starting to pick up some interest and excitement, and the experiences were starting to kind of come together. And Clay and I are working on the book, and he said, Mason, there's a gentleman named Jeff Hotmeyer, and Jeff is pretty much considered one of the top thought leaders in the world of whiskey, and he's extremely well versed, very knowledgeable, a ton of wisdom, a ton of insight. I think it'd be really if we could get a call with him, it'd be to our benefit to start to share with him kind of the general thoughts of what we're building with Bourbon Lore. And I was like, absolutely, right? let's get him on. And I've been a president and CEO of a healthcare company for a long time, but I'm new to the world of American whiskey. And so, to me, curiosity is such a valuable asset in life. And the more curious you and I could be, Ricky, the more questions we can ask, the more that we can learn, and then the more that I feel like I have the ability to actually contribute in a meaningful capacity to the teams I serve, to the industries that I'm part of, and to the businesses that we're building. So I was like, yeah, bring, if we get a call with Jeff, let's do it. So we get on this call with Jeff, and I mean, Ricky, we're probably not more than 15 minutes, 20 minutes at max. And Jeff is just like one after another, direct, questions and, comments in a way to where I'm just, Clay's kind of, quieted down. I'm just, struggling because I haven't even thought, two steps further, where he's going. And I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't even consider that, Jeff. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So probably 15, 20 minutes into it, Jeff's like, you know what? He was pretty abrupt about it. He was like, I've asked you these 7 or 10 questions. I didn't feel like, you've done your research yet. You haven't done your due diligence yet. I'm calling it. I'm not, we're not having any further conversation here. Call me back. Let me know. Essentially when, you got your act together, right? So he ended the call. It was over. Clay and I are sitting on this virtual call. I'm like, wow, Jeff just popped off. We're supposed to be on this call for an hour. So I'm looking at Clay. Clay's like, oh God, that went horrible. And I'm a firm believer that, God has given us this gift, right? And that is, we are each blessed with, with basically, our internal compass, our kind of our true north. And what that means to me is like there's a level of from a mindset and the power of, your thoughts and your soundtracks and your logic. How do you always listen to that, right? How do you really tap into that? But how do you then also secondly tap into kind of like that heart and that that compassion, right? That empathy, and then third is that intuition, right? That that spirit that each of us have that kind of gives us a little bit of that I don't know uh, to me that it's a level of passion that I feel that intuition provides to me in a way that I try to bring to life. And so if I take that power of mindset, take that heart and compassion and take that intuition and that gut check and bring it together, I told Clay, Clay, I think like Jeff is exactly what we needed right now because we're less than 6 months in. We're having this phenomenal success, but man, we need to stay curious. We need to stay, sharp when it comes to the questions we're asking. And so I was like, would you mind giving me his cell phone? I want to reach out to him. And I shot him a text right after that call. I said, Mr. Hotmeyer, Mason Walker here. I know we just had our call about I don't know an hour ago. Um, I I would absolutely be honored if you would be a mentor and a coach to me because what we're building with Bourbon Lore is not a gig. It's not a job. It's not a business. We're not looking for clients. We're not looking for customers. I truly want us to build a movement in the industry that is here for generations to come, giving this gift of experiential living and creating living lore in this aspiration that Bourbon Lore might be able to facilitate. And so I'm asking you, would you honor me in being my coach? Would you honor me in being my mentor? And he basically sent me a text back right away. He's like, after the call we just had, that's the first text you sent me. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, he laughed and he's like, I respect that. And he goes, yes, like I'll help and, help you in any way I can. And so, Ricky, so I flew out there that following month and took him to dinner. And I said, my treat, I'm flying out to Nashville. Uh, I'll treat you to whatever restaurant is your favorite. I just would be honored to have 2 hours undivided of your attention to learn as much as I possibly can from you. And that began, in mid, I'd say the end of Q2 in 24. And he has stayed with me every step of the way and been nothing but a phenomenal guide, friend, mentor, coach, and really a teammate. So Jeff's career in the world of whiskey is one of the most extraordinary and accomplished careers from a business perspective. And his last entity that he built and grew was one of the largest whiskey brokerage entities in the world for Scotch to Irish to American to Japanese. And so he exited and retired about 2 years ago. And he has a phenomenal private barrel collection, as you can imagine. Like if you're one of the largest whiskey brokerages in the world, Ricky, you get to pick some pretty amazing, some pretty amazing barrels, right? And so one of the things when we were getting ready to officially launch the membership, I asked him if he'd honor me by being our first, founding member. And he of course said yes. And I said, too, would you do me a favor and allow me to personally select with you, the first group of private barrels for our membership directly from your private collection? And that way our members truly have something that's a one of one and unique to this membership and to their to their ability to get something extraordinary. Jeff, like you're the guy, right? So yeah, so that's a little behind the scenes with Mr. Hoppenmeyer and I.
Well, that's pretty cool, and the fact that where it started with him basically just hanging up on you, and now he's working alongside you and he's mentoring you. That's pretty darn cool.
So life's about, so
So I've known Bobby for years. Don't even know where I'm. Like, well, I just physically met him, which is wild, but I've known him for years. How did you and Bobby connect? How did he get involved in this brand? And kind of tell me how that came together. And he's what led us
yeah.
together.
He's what brought us together, and a phenomenal human, and somebody I'm truly grateful to call my friend and teammate in so many ways. Bobby was invited by a mutual friend that he and I have, another golf pro here in Scottsdale. To We were hosting these these kind of like private residence invitation only, some friends and family dinners back in December. So not open to the public, but wanted to share what we were bringing to life in the world's first private membership model of this caliber with Bourbon Lore to a select group. And this friend that I have, is another golf pro. He says, "Hey, I have a really good friend. I think, he's always trying to, find opportunities or things for his private clients to get access to that are avid golfers, but always looking for a little bit of a something unique and something different, right? And this could be perfect for him and his private golf community and network." So he came to one of our dinners, and we put on these 3-hour dinner experiences, and there's 5 different acts that we bring to life over the course of this 3-hour dinner experience. And Bobby happened to sit next to me, during the dinner component, and at the end of the night, we got to know each other a little bit, and I was definitely, really impressed with just his overall demeanor and the questions he asked, and just the energy, right? Like there's a certain level of energy that people bring to a room, and you can feel it, right? It's palatable in a beautiful way, and Bobby has that, right? So I just honestly, we left that night. I thought this is perfect. Great guy, new friend. I have a lot to learn in the world of private golf and the club environment. And I can't wait to team up with this guy to learn more about what he's working on. Well, one thing led to another, and from the course of that dinner, Ricky, in December to like New Year's, I'm in Sedona with my family, and Bobby basically and I have a call after New Year's, and he's like, "Mason," he goes, "I've been in the world of private golf for almost 25 years. I love the game. I love the community, but I've never seen anything remotely like what Bourbon Lore is bringing to life. And if I can be a conduit, if I can be, a facilitator of helping bring Bourbon Lore into the world of private golf at the level that I love the game, I think there's something truly magical here. And I'd love to be a part of it." And I was like shocked. I'm thinking to myself, like, well, went from a friend at a dinner to now we're sitting here over New Year's Eve, and I'm outside in Sedona at this house and going, "I think we might have a new national sales director." So I made Bobby an offer on the phone right then and there, and he said yes. And we got back to town here in Scottsdale and put pen to paper and made it happen. So Bobby officially joined me and helped me really kick off, I would say, the membership model, and now the new Bourbon Lore kind of private golf collective that we're rolling out. So he's been with us since the start of the new year here.
Well, that is awesome, and it's awesome for a couple of reasons because we've been talking for, I don't know, hour and a half, and we haven't even talked about golf. And this is a golf podcast, by the way. I don't know if anybody forgot about that along the way here, but you mentioned the golf collective. So yeah, Bobby plays golf. It all comes full circle. What is the golf collective? Tell me what that is, and where do you see that going in the future? And dang it, I want to get you out here to the Coachella Valley, man. Let's do something here in the Springs.
I am in. I am in. I love it. I think the whole Palm Springs, Palm Desert. It's a beautiful, really unique area. I love it out there. So I'm excited to come out, Ricky. I think we look at Bourbon Lore. There's a level of this kind of aspect of, I would say, like paying appreciation to the heritage and tradition and some of the legacy, as well as, I would say, the community that the world of bourbon has represented for many generations in the United States with some of these incredible distillers. And when you look at this kind of world of private golf, I love that aspect of tradition, right? I love that aspect of heritage. I love that aspect of, this is a community that we are, almost, empowered by and grateful to be affiliated with and a part of. And that lives both, on the course, at the clubhouse, at maybe our private residences at the club, or even when we're traveling, right? And so, one of the things I asked Bobby is, for myself personally, like Ricky, like I grew up in an antique shop. My dad was a cowboy. I have literally never swung a club until basically the last 12 months. And so I've got a lot to learn. My kids are obsessed with it, which is super cool. And it's cool to see what even like a tiger has inspired for several generations. And even my kids are proud to wear their like tiger red. And I'm like, you're 14 years old in eighth grade. You didn't really grow up a tiger, but he's such an icon. I grew up more, around like watching like Payne Stewart. Remember Payne? I always thought like he had such style. But so with Bobby with the Golf Collective, he's been taking his experiences and his love of the game, and if he can bring some of the greatest aspects of what he loves about the game of golf to the world of Bourbon Lore and creating these unique on-premise experiences for private golf clubs, but also some off-premise opportunities for us to be able to keep that energy going for the private member with Bourbon Lore, and then also for our own members with how do we get to experience some of the world of golf, but in a Bourbon Lore, I would say, elevated aspect. He's working on that as well. So essentially, we are officially bringing Bourbon Lore to a select group of private clubs around the U.S., where we are creating these unique opportunities for us to be able to kind of complement their annual programs for their members and to truly bring their members something unique and differentiated and special in a way that creates a new level of memory and engagement for that member and their significant other, as well as their close friends at that respective club and property. But also, how can we bring our members to some of the world of private golf, like what we've started to build with a good friendship that we've been establishing with Dormy. I don't know if Bobby shared with you, much about Dormy and their 7 properties they have in the U.S., but we'll be able to start to kind of bring our members with the Bourbon Lore Golf Collective, to some of the private club environments, but with a Bourbon Lore kind of curated package that's exclusive with the club and our member for that 24 hours or 48 hours that we're on grounds. But more to come. He hasn't officially kicked it off yet, Ricky, but it is here at the end of May, going into June.
Let's talk about that bottle gallery on your website. The photography is spectacular. Who's behind that photography, and where does all that information come from? And that's going to parlay into my next question about the book, but that stuff on the website's incredible.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. That was can you imagine coming to your beautiful bride, to your wife, and say, babe, I've got this great idea. I would love to publish a book and be the world's first privately held collection to be published. But I want to ensure that this collection, the photography has to really make sure that it represents the bottles and brings the bottles to life, where there's no color filtration, there's no AI. Like, I want the actual bottle, the real image itself in that book. So what that means is we're going to have a video or a photographer, a professional museum grade photographer at our residence for what he estimates is going to be about a month straight, Monday through Friday, sun up to sundown, shooting just 300 bottles. Because there's a couple thousand bottles that we now have in this collection, and I have about 300 of them that I worked on the clay to kind of select to be in the book. And so when I shared this with Ash, she's like, "So this person's going to be at our home Monday through Friday for a month." I was like, "Yes, he will." And I said, it'd be nice. Probably should feed him breakfast. Probably should feed him lunch. We'll include him with our family dinners. He's like, "Do you know this person?" And I said, "No," but I said, he comes highly recommended. So Lincoln Design actually referred me to a gentleman named Darren Higgins. This book would not have been able to come to life if it wasn't for both Lincoln, Clay Risen, as well as Darren Higgins. I am not that talented, Ricky, to be able to pull off a book this extraordinary. So this definitely took an incredible team effort to bring this thing to life. But Darren came over and created an entire photo studio, took over 3 bays of our garage, and what was supposed to be a long month turned into, you ready for this, brother? 5 months. 5 months, Monday through Friday, sun up to sundown, shooting these 300 bottles for 9,000 unique images to create the most extraordinary photography set ever captured of these bottles ever in the history of whiskey. So you'll see in the book, there's both lifestyle photography as well as hero shots. And I'm really, really proud of it. So, I'll pause there because I don't know if you want me to jump in the book. But yeah, photography's killer. I'm glad you love it, man.
I do want you to jump into the book because I just opened it and I'm pretty much just going to get lost for a little bit. So you talk about the book and I'll be right back.
I think you'll see. So you'll want, when you're building teams, you're building businesses, like you're proud of obviously your culture, you're proud of what your brand represents in the category. You're inspired by what you're able to do for that, respective industry. And so I've tried to channel that into a more creative side of this next chapter of my life with Bourbon Lore. And so with the book, we didn't want it to just be like, hey, we're just putting some generic photography. We're talking about just some high level, kind of information about these bottles. I really, Clay and I talked about this and we're like, look, this has never been done before. Like, we actually own these bottles. And not only do we own these bottles, these are legendary bottles. Like, these are bottles that you just don't ever really see, and especially in one group. Like, you might see a few of them here or there in a particular auction or, a particular collection, but to see all these bottles together. So how do we do these bottles justice, right? And so there's kind of a couple core themes of the book. Number one was, there's been this amazing ride, this incredible journey that bourbon has been on, American whiskey has been on, from basically the late 1800s up through, this kind of golden age of American whiskey for the last, 2 decades. So how do we bring that story to life over, let's call it a century plus of history, to how do we leverage and utilize these incredible one-of-one bottles to be the primary characters in telling that story, so they get to be the heroes, right? They get to be the hero in their own story, so to speak. And then third, how do we take some of the lore behind these bottles and share that, with the world, right? And so you'll see, from a brand design and copy and photography, there's 100 bottles in the book that tell the story of essentially bourbon from the late 1800s up through the mid 2000s here. You have hero shots as well as lifestyle shots. These bottles that are untouched, brother, like no color filtration. They're the real freaking McCoy. And then Clay did an incredible job of being able to share some of the history, heritage, and lore, the stories associated with those bottles that you'll see in the copy. And then I worked with Lincoln to really kind of bring, some of the elements of my, I'd say really that childhood of growing up at Country Emporium Antiques and spending those first 18 years of my journey, in ghost towns and on cattle ranches and Native American reservations, and, hearing from complete strangers stories of pieces that meant more to their family than any amount of monetary value or money. And so when they go to share this saddle or when they go to pass on this Navajo blanket, they don't want you simply to sell that piece and help them make 20 or 30% on it. They truly want to ensure that that piece lives on for another generation to cherish it and appreciate it. And I wanted to try to find a way to do the same with this book, right? And so from a overall experience and kind of brand kind of equity standpoint, you'll see here the book weighs almost 6 pounds. It's over 300 pages. It's kind of this really cool, I think, kind of vintage, iconic black and gold look. The front cover, you see that cowboy on the horse. That's the old Winchester Western horse. And when I was 12 and passed my Arizona Game of Fish hunter education program, one grandpa takes you through, your other grandfather gives you your first hunting rifle. And then my dad gave me this old Winchester Western sign. And that sign was an old porcelain sign that hung next to my bed since I was 12 years of age. And I'd always think, Ricky, like, that cowboy, that maverick, he's going somewhere. And someday I want to be just like that cowboy. So there's an element of that that's in the brand design. You'll see some of the upside down horseshoe on the front cover. That's where kind of our families, we first homesteaded in Arizona Territory in the late 1870s. The first two generations, we were cattle ranchers here. Some of the old whiskey bottles I used to dig up and some of the old dumps around southern Arizona and New Mexico. One of my first vision quests in the Chiricahuas when I was 9 years old. So you see some of that Navajo textile down there at the bottom. On the back, cover of the book, you'll see that kind of marshal badge. I used to collect sheriff badges from the 1800s when I was a kid. So, yeah, brother, a lot of fun, lots of stuff in here. So many cool bottles to talk about. Lots to shoot another episode together, and I'll just dive into some of these chapters and some of these bottles.
You know what would be cool? I'm just thinking about this, like not at the club that I'm currently at, but the club that I was at prior. We had a whiskey society. There was 36 members that got together and drank whiskey, and that'd be something you could just show up and talk for an hour and open a bottle of
Yeah.
there's so much possibility with this.
Yeah, you're totally right. And I think that's a piece of maybe why people, I feel like, so fortunate, why they've resonated with Bourbon Lores. We're not just sipping bourbon. The idea is not just to open a bottle. The philosophy and the conceptual aspiration of Bourbon Lore is, how do we grab these moments where we help slow down, create a level of presence, create a level of connection through a level of lore that's both in history and storytelling, to the group of people that we have together, to the things that we're doing at that particular property. And then when we crack that unique one of one bottle, it's now to kind of like bring it all together, right? To put the bow on this incredible night, this incredible day, this incredible event, to where now that bottle is kind of the symbol of this extraordinary 3 hours that we just shared together. To where now every time I look at that bottle, every time I pour that bottle, it gives me a gift of memory. It gives me this gift of joy and happiness. And then it gives me this gift of being able to share that lore with another group of friends, family, or colleagues that keeps it going, right? That keeps that momentum rolling. And so sometimes that's just as simple as you shared, of being at a night where we're sharing in a bottle and having a cigar and telling some history and diving into some of the lore. And sometimes it's around a member golf tournament, member guest tournament at a club, and we're celebrating some of the private custom pieces that we curated for the guests at that event. So, but I love it, brother.
Where is the best place to learn more about you and Bourbon Lore? Where should we go?
I would absolutely be honored for anybody to be a part of our Bourbon Lore community through bourbonlore.com. And, to the extent that, you want to be able to kind of pop in and check in and see where we're at on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, and, some of the incredible adventures we're having in places that we're visiting. You can follow us on Instagram at Bourbon Lore there. And, to the extent that you have a moment and want to, take 5 minutes and watch some sort of video with Bourbon Lore in Jackson Hole, or in Park City at Sundance, or out in Kentucky with some of these master distillers. We've got some incredible video content that's never been curated before on our channel on YouTube under Bourbon Lore. So, but I truly appreciate every bit of this moment, Ricky, and the world of private golf, and just, I'd say, the golf enthusiast in general is extraordinary. And to the extent that we have an opportunity to be able to share a little bit around what we're doing with what you've been building, it's an honor, my friend. So I appreciate you, brother.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and we have talked about so much today. But what else? Is there anything else that you want to share with me before we take off that we haven't talked about? Just so grateful for all of this, man.
Yeah, no, same here. No, I mean, I would say, for me, more than anything else, I'm our aspiration is to be able to create a moment to connect with our guests that allows for them to be able to experience something that they've never experienced before. And even though they've built some of the greatest companies and achieved some of those extraordinary milestones personally, professionally, financially, how can we create an experience that allows for them to have a memory that will last a lifetime? And if we can have the ability to do that one relationship at a time, one guest at a time, we're honored to bring this Bourbon Lore movement to the U.S. And see a new chapter of lore written with you and any of our new friends and family that we continue to meet along the way. So I appreciate having the moment to be able to share some of this with your audience, and we'll be honored and grateful to continue the conversations and hopefully meet some of your audience, through social or even a part of our Bourbon Lore community at one of our upcoming events. So I appreciate you, brother, and looking forward to coming out to the desert and seeing you soon, my friend. But after summer.
Well, yeah, after summer, so it's hot where you are, it's hot where I am. So I do want to tee it up
Yep.
soon, though. But where are we playing? I mean, your house or mine? They're both hot right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we might need to work an angle with Bobby. We're gonna be in Park City. We got, I think, some things going on the what was the third? I think third week of July. Have you played out there at Glen Wild?
No, I've never been up there.
Oh well, I think you might need to, yeah, head on over and meet up with Bobby and I, and we'll see if we can get some of our Park City friends and some of the programs that we're putting on out there to allow a buddy from the desert to join us. Pick foursome.
Sounds good to me, man. Well, leaders are readers, and there's no doubt you are a big leader in this in a couple of spaces. But besides your book, what book are you currently reading?
Oh, it's actually last week we had a team offsite, and we were working on a few things, just some of our infrastructure. And I gave a couple books away, and but Bobby actually dropped off a bag of books for me. And the first one I pulled out that I actually have heard about, but I haven't read it yet. I just cracked it. It's this Unreasonable Hospitality. Have you seen that one? Have you
No,
read
not
that
only have
one?
I say okay, so before you even said the name of the book, I was already smiling, and I knew that was the book that you were going to say. The book is one of the best books ever written. Got the chance to see him speak last year at the CMAA World Conference in Las Vegas. If
Oh,
you
you did?
Oh my God, he is unbelievable, and we're trying to actually get him to come speak to the both my club here at the Springs and also some local club managers here this summer. Towards the end of the summer, we've got a connection to him and his company, and the book is spectacular. And if you haven't finished reading it, whenever you get to the hot dog story, let me know. That's all I'm gonna say. When you get to the hot dog story, let me know.
Oh, all right. I'll text you. Yeah, no, we'd always do a lot with leadership books and Maxwell and a lot of operational stuff with Collins with our healthcare company. And so this is the first time I cracked this book, but I'm loving it so far. And so when I get to the hot dog, I'm gonna ping you and be like, "All right, let's talk."
Well, who's in your dream foursome? Anybody that's alive or dead? Could be in whiskey, could be in something else. And
Oh,
and where are you playing?
so I would say who is in my dream foursome? Well, somebody who is new to the world of golf, but a big fan, like my number. So in my dream foursome, I would say it'd have to be my son Preston. He's our eighth grader, and since we moved here to Scottsdale, he's been picking up the game and playing and absolutely loving it. So I'd say for sure Preston. I think Bobby would have to be in it with me because he is kind of coaching me right now and guiding me in this world of golf and helping me find my way. As somebody who's turning 45 tomorrow and learning the world of golf for the first time, I need lots of love and education. So for sure, Preston, Bobby, and I'd probably say, at that point. Um, I mean, honestly, like there's so many legends right now that are out there that I would just find fascinating to play with, any of these guys, right? So whether it's Roy or whether it's Tiger, I mean, if somebody doesn't really know like this world all that well, seeing these guys on TV, but then like you think about like I had a buddy who talked about like Arnie Palmer all the time, right? And some of those legends. So I don't know, man. I'd have to honestly ask Bobby who he would want to have as his like kind of dream teammate. But for sure, at least right now, it's Preston and Bobby.
That's all right. You can play as three. You'll play faster. But where are you going? You going to Pebble? You going to Augusta? You going to Bandon? Where are you teeing it up?
So I had the fortunate opportunity to be out at Augusta with a good friend David Coors and the Coors family, and I was blown away as somebody who's not spent a ton of time on golf courses, being out there felt like you were on like sacred ground, right? It felt spiritual in a way to where I was blown away. So if there was ever an opportunity to play Augusta, I feel like, wow, what a remarkable moment in your life that you'll never forget. Um, but I think Bobby, is it Hoopy? Is that how Hoopy? There's a club that Bobby talks about that he always wants to play at that
I
I'll
don't
have to think
know.
about
That
it.
sounds fun. Where is it?
No, no. He's brought up a couple times to me. It's a really apparently phenomenal club. So I'm not sure I'm even pronouncing it right, but I think it sounds like something like Hoopy. So I'll have to ask Bobby about it. I'll pick Augusta for now for Mason.
Well, yeah. So, well, let's. Okay, so this is gonna be a fun little thing because you mentioned the Coors name, right? So I finally got the chance. My wife and I went to the Great American Beer Festival last year, and I only went because I got the chance to go see the Coors factory. And the reason why that's important to me, so my wife and I are huge craft beer nerds, travel the world drinking beer. I am closing in on 20,000 unique beers. I track them on an app on my phone, and very rarely will I ever drink the same beer twice. I only tell you this because my number one tracked beer is Coors Light. I only drink it out of the 16-ounce screw top cans, and as of today, I have had that 668 times. So the next time you're talking to your buddy from Coors with the last name Coors, you tell him I'm funding his operation.
Uh, well, he's chairman now of the board. He took his dad's role, so Dave will be very, very proud. He'll be very proud.
That's awesome.
Yeah, somebody asked the other day, like I was like, look, I grew up around, the banquet, all the time with my pops, and so still to this day, I'll always have, some Coors Banquet here at the house for our guests. And I was like, what's for the banquet? I'm like, I grew up around it, and it's phenomenal. I have to check this app out, man. 20,000
Dude, it's
unique
wild.
beers.
Yeah, so I mean, literally, when we're done recording, I'm gonna go to a brewery and try some new beers. But as I sit here, I am at 19,508 unique beers.
Oh my gosh, that's freaking insane. All right. Out of that, is there any area or region or brewery that really stands out to you that I should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. If anybody ever said what's your favorite beer, it's the next one that I've never had. I like big, thick, barrel-aged stouts that are high in ABV. I like
Yeah.
IPAs, triple IPAs. I think that the team at Goose Island does a fantastic job with their Bourbon County
Mm,
series.
yes.
The Bourbon County brand stout is just every single year, and every variant of that is spectacular. We'll wait in line to get it. We'll wait in line a lot for beer, to be honest. We waited in line when we lived in Northern California for Pliny the Younger. We waited in line for like 4 hours to get a 4 ounce pour of that stuff, right? And it's wild. Like the culture that you're talking about within whiskey, there's a similar culture within beer, and we love it. But man, anything that you get your hands on, if it's dark and it's high in ABV, it's right up my alley.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, no, I saw that about like I mean, obviously we lived up in the Pacific Northwest, but those darker stouts, I still enjoy to this day, and sip on them. So delicious. Some of them are like a dessert in a glass, but
Well, I don't look at the calories because liquid calories don't count.
yeah.
Well,
Oh,
I am Tiger's biggest fan. We became quick friends, so be careful how you answer this. But he's tied with Sam Snead, 82 official PGA Tour wins. Do you think he gets one more before he retires?
God willing, I hope so. I mean, think about how many people that I meet that came and fell in love with the game of golf and the world of golf through his influence. You know, trials, tribulations. Obviously, nobody's perfect by any means. But for what this individual has stood for and what Tiger has demonstrated in his level of tenacity and grit and work ethic, I hope he gets that shot, and I hope he makes it, come true. So, you know, all due respect to Sam, but I hope Tiger gets it.
What's next for you in Bourbon Lore? What's the immediate future? What's it look like?
I think continue to feed this movement, right? And I'm a big fan of how do you create energy, within the organization, within your team, within your culture, building the community. But what's next for us is really we're in phase one of our private membership. And so, Ricky, like it's an exciting new phase. 2024, we officially launched, and our aspiration was to be the world's first privately held collection to be published. And we did that, I think, in a truly, extraordinary way. And we also want to launch the world's first American whiskey destination experiences, and we did that. And last year, we want to bring to life these kind of corporate, kind of private client ways where we could bring Bourbon Lore to you in a really special curated format. And then we ended last year with the blessing of, families and distilleries like Heaven Hill and Michter's and, the Russell's family and, Diageo. And I mean, just incredible board members that we have supporting what we're doing. So now phase 3, which is kind of 2026 here, it's launching the private membership model. And so 75, private members are going to be invited in, 50 legends and 25 founding legends. And we're currently approaching our first, group of 10, inaugural members. And it feels exceptional to see something that was a dream and an aspiration a little over 24 months ago, evolve into what it is today, and with the groups and the people and the members that are representing it. So what's next for us is let's keep this movement going. Nothing like this in the world has ever been built. Nothing like this in the world exists today. And we get to be the first at creating something that I think is truly remarkable for the world of American whiskey, but also the story of the United States and the love of the American West that that my family has. So help us continue this message and see this first phase of membership get solidified with an incredible group of 75 families that represent the core cause and culture of what we stand for as Bourbon Lore.
Step into the heart of Scotland with Eden Mill Scotland experiences. Journey through the art of craft distilling, where tradition meets innovation. From blending your own gin to savoring the finest whiskeys, every moment is a celebration of Scotland's rich heritage. Whether you're a whiskey enthusiast, a gin lover, or simply an adventurer at heart, Eden Mill offers experiences you'll never forget. Book your journey today and create memories to last a lifetime.
In golf, the 19th hole is a slang term for a bar or a restaurant on or near the golf course, very often in the clubhouse itself. What is your favorite 19th hole? And I don't even know why I ask, but what are you drinking? And you better say whiskey.
I live right over here, near Camelback Mountain. So my 19th hole is a place called the Sanctuary, which is a small private little resort over here, where they have an incredible bar with a stunning view. And I'm generally sipping on a Manhattan. That's kind of my go-to beverage of choice. With rye, not to say bourbon always in it. I'm a big rye guy. So I'd say my 19th hole is a Sanctuary on Camelback Mountain, sipping on a Manhattan with some element of rye in it.
What an awesome conversation, man. This was special. And I thank you for doing this. What a fantastic discussion. And you and Bobby, I'm so glad that we were able to connect. And you guys are just such genuine human beings. And I'm so blessed to know you. And I'm glad that we met. Keep up the great work. Best of luck with Bourbon Lore. And I can't wait to raise a glass with you soon, whether it's your desert or mine. Cheers, my friend.
Thank you, Ricky. Cheers, brother. Appreciate you, man. Thank you for including me. We'll talk soon.
That puts this instalment of the Wednesday Match Play podcast in the books. But we'll be back next week for another exciting episode of the show.